Tonight's video features 3 nearly kidnapped stories, so make sure the next time you go out anywhere, day or night, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure to look over your shoulder and be safe. Let's begin. Number 1. My husband was almost abducted. I think about this moment when he and I get in a disagreement and immediately stop being mad at him. The idea that I almost lost him and never would have known what happened is enough to calm even my most justified anger. This happened about 3 years ago. I was 24 and he was 25. It had pretty much been just me and him since we were 17 and 18, so my whole world was almost snatched away. It was late at night. I just picked him up from work, and we'd stopped at a Harris Teeter for a bottle of wine and a pizza. A couple of details. I had both of our cell phones in my purse because that's just how we did it when we were together. He didn't like having it in his back pocket. Also, my husband is very pretty. I mean, he's handsome, but he's got long, curly black hair and a slight build, and we both look way younger than we are. It's made us targets for more than a few weirdos. So, we're in line about to pay, and he realizes he just left his wallet in the car. The store is pretty much empty, and there was no one behind us, so he said, "I'll be right back," and ran out into the dark parking lot. Now, I'm anxious anyway, so when he was gone for literally 4 minutes, I ran outside to look for him. I saw a black truck with a trunk cover. It was driving away under the single street light, and my husband was nowhere in sight. My legs felt like jelly. I never understood that saying until that moment. I ran to our car praying he was there. Thank God, or whoever he was. He was sitting in our locked car, staring after the truck, until I too loudly smacked the passenger window. He looked at me with giant, terrified eyes. "Get in!" He leaned over and unlocked my door, and yelled at me to lock it back when I sat down. He was shaking and freaking out and hugging me. I finally just squeezed him and said, "Baby, what the fuck happened?" He finally just said, "Give me my phone," and he called 911. So I heard the story as he was telling it to the operator, and it still makes me want to throw up when I think about it. He had walked out to the car and noticed the black truck a lane over. We both worked in stores in that shopping center and had never been afraid of that parking lot, but luckily, it sent up a red flag, and he hurried. As he fumbled with the keys, no fob, he heard the truck start up and figured it was leaving. In the time it took him to grab his wallet out of the seat and turn around, the truck was behind him, and a big man had opened the trunk. As the man turned around to face him, my husband just fell, sat back in our car, and slammed the door. The man didn't try the door right away. Instead, he hit the window in anger, and that's what saved my husband, because he managed in that moment to lock the doors. The man just stood there for a whole minute looking around and tried opening the door twice. Then he paced for a few seconds, then went back to the front of his truck and dug around. This whole time, my husband sat in horror without his phone. I wish he had thought to honk the horn or something to scare the guy or get someone's attention, but he was too scared to think. Finally, the man just climbed in the cab and sat until I guess he saw me running out of the store, and then they zoomed off. The police arrived and my husband gave a description of the truck and the man. Tall, big, white, balding, dressed in all black, like a sweatsuit. The truck either didn't have a license plate or he'd covered it. They didn't find him, that we know of. We've since moved out of the state. So, that's how my husband was almost kidnapped, for what I refuse to imagine. I stayed awake for nights just holding him and feeling him breathe. I almost lost him. After the shock wore away, he became rather serious about working out, because the fact that he wouldn't have been able to fight the man off haunts him. Fuck that guy for making my husband a victim. Number 2. When I was 21, I was living in Dublin as an exchange student at a university there, and I had friends from my home university studying around Europe at the same time. My home friends and I agreed to meet in Paris for a weekend. One of them was staying there and said we could crash at her flat. These plans required that I traveled alone, since I was the only one of the group studying in Dublin. In order to get away from my flat to my friend's flat, I had to take a bus from my campus to the airport, take a flight to Charles de Gaulle, then navigate the metro from the airport to her place. The first 2 steps went fine. I should also mention this is the first time I had traveled out of Ireland since being there, so naturally it was also my first encounter with an environment that didn't speak English by default. I immediately felt more alone than I wanted to. Once I arrived at Charles de Gaulle, I decided I wasn't in the mood to try to read French, so I decided to take a cab to my friend's flat. I asked an airport worker where I could find a taxi, and they brushed me off, or didn't understand English. As I'm walking away, a man comes up to me and says, "You are looking for a taxi? So am I. I can show you where to find one." I was relieved and, quite honestly, wasn't weirded out at all at this point. I walked with him and had small talk until he walked us into an elevator and went down to the lowest floor. The doors open to a parking lot that is dark, devoid of any people or vehicles, except for one black car. In the distance, there's a glass corridor with travelers walking through, so I wasn't entirely alone. At least I was in eyesight of other people. Another man gets out of the car and pops the trunk. As I look to the first man who says, "We have a private taxi company. Please, put your suitcase in the back and get in the car." For some reason I felt so afraid that I asked for a taxi license, and they said they don't have one because they are a private company. They were very insistent that I get in the car, and I was noticing no taxi markings on it at all, and darkly tinted windows. At this point I realized that the scenario makes no sense. This man introduced himself as someone looking for a cab, along with me, and now he's a private taxi company employee? I turned around and confidently walked back towards the elevator, and noticed they hadn't come after me. I have no idea if private taxi companies are a thing in Paris, but they either have very creepy ways of getting customers, or they are a front for some type of abduction scheme. I went to the bathroom after that, and on the stall was posted a message in 5 different languages about human trafficking, and to be vigilant at the airport, so that was unsettling. So strange men who may or may not have their own private taxi company, let's not meet ever again. Number 3. Back in 1994, I was a 20-year-old guy working as a cashier at a grocery store. On the way to work, my car got a flat, so I took it to the tire shop about a mile down the road and walked to work. After work, I was walking down the rural highway to get my car when this dark blue van pulls up. Yeah, I know, stereotypical van. Anyway, the guy hollers out his window, asking if I wanted a ride. The shop was still 3/4 of a mile away, so I'm thinking yes. I cross the runoff trench and look in through the passenger window to explain where I'm going. As I'm about to open the door and climb in, I look down and see a stack of gay bondage magazines. I'm pretty open-minded, but it struck me odd, and I decided I would rather walk. Better safe than sorry. At this point, I tell him no thanks, but he keeps insisting that I get in the van. Over and over, he insists it's dangerous to walk on the highway, and I should let him give me a ride. After telling him no several times, I just walked away and jumped back to the other side of the runoff trench. For nearly a block, he followed me, driving slowly on the shoulder. He kept looking over his shoulder at traffic, and I got the feeling he was waiting for the highway to be clear so he could abduct me, or even worse. I was moments away from running into the woods, which in hindsight probably would have been a horrible idea, when a state trooper drove by, and I flagged him down. The guy in the van drove away as soon as he saw the trooper. The trooper gave me a ride to the tire shop, while I gave him a description of the guy and the van. Just the idea that I almost got in a van to save myself a short walk still disturbs me to this day. Thanks for listening, guys. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Sinful Society if you haven't already. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I want you guys to send me any holiday horror stories that you have, whether it be Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, I really don't care. Anything related to the holiday season. I want to do a huge video of all holiday stories, so I need you guys to start emailing those to me as soon as possible. Remember, my email is in the description box below. Thank you guys again. We hit 5,000 subscribers. Feels amazing. Let's hit 10,000 before the year is over. Until we meet again, stay sinful.